President Trump confirms he's all out of moves, and a purge of conservative voices begins. Strap in, friends. The next few weeks are going to be tough. It's time to hold the line.
Congress has certified the results. A new administration will be inaugurated on January 20th. My focus now turns to ensuring a smooth, orderly, and seamless transition of power. This moment calls for healing and reconciliation.
Welcome to Hold the Line. I'm Buck Sexton. That was President Trump for the first time acknowledging the election of Joe Biden and promising a smooth transition of power. The president also cleared up another lingering question this afternoon, tweeting, quote, "To all of those who've been asking, I will not be going to the inauguration on January 20th. A little bit of a break in tradition there, but probably for the best. Meanwhile, there are efforts to silence conservatives in the wake of Wednesday's riot, and they appear to be ramping up. In addition to the president being locked out of his social media accounts for several days, publisher Simon & Schuster, big global level publisher, has announced they've canceled plans to publish a book by Missouri Senator Josh Hawley. In a recent statement, the company wrote, quote, "As a publisher, it will always be our mission to amplify a variety of voices and viewpoints, but at the same time, we take seriously our larger public responsibility as citizens and cannot support Senator Hawley after his role in what became a dangerous threat." Yes, that's right, friends. Josh Hawley, a clear and present danger to the nation. A lot of people need to take a deep breath here and look at what really happened and who did what and who's responsible for what. You can expect a lot more of this purge, though, in the coming weeks as Democrats are getting into their seats of power and the vindictiveness of their policies will become likely more clear. Now, let's all understand something. It has been a very tough week for conservatives, for Trump supporters, no question about that. We've denounced, and right away, I should say, as well as continuing from the first minutes of it, the riot on Capitol Hill. We recognize that the media has a tremendous double standard in the way they report on and the way that they describe left-wing violence, as we saw from BLM all over the summer. But we also know that two wrongs do not make a right, and that we have principles that we must hold to. And one of them is that we don't attack police officers, we don't loot or vandalize government buildings, we don't do any of this stuff. You know, a Capitol Hill police officer died as a result of being hit on the head by a fire extinguisher here. If we back the blue, that doesn't change the moment that all of a sudden people are upset or that there is some kind of a political moment here. We have to back them all the time. And prayers and thoughts to the family of that officer. So now we have to look at what we are facing ourselves. Because Trump has lost. That has happened. We can talk forever about cheating that we believe or even could prove in the future happened in this election. We don't know the degree of it. We haven't been able to use the process to get the judicial satisfaction we need. So what happens next? What's the next stop here for all of us? I do think that there will be conservative unity. I think that there will be a time in the relatively near future, and we will look around on the right, generally speaking, and say, we need to ally here because the left is looking to make an example of Trump supporters. This is not just a one-off situation we're seeing here. It's not enough that Donald Trump is beaten. In fact, as we see, they want him removed from office using the 25th Amendment. They want the Congress to vote to impeach and remove with 2 weeks left in his term. What's that all about? Humiliation, not just of Trump, but of everybody who voted for him. They want to destroy the movement. They want to destroy the idea as well as he's going out the door. Does anyone think that this would be the approach if there was an earnest desire from the incoming Biden administration for unity? They do have Biden, Harris, the Democrats that will be led by Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer in the House and Senate respectively. They have an opportunity here to at least calm things down and bring America together somewhat. Does anyone think they're going to seize that? I hope they do, because at some point it is much more important what's happening to the country than what happens in any one political spat. Do you think the Democrats are going to forgive? Are they going to extend a hand to those who have been supporting Trump up to this point? No, I think we could see future prosecutions, not just the persecutions we see of social media companies and major corporations who are going to try to make examples of prominent Trump supporters in the weeks and months ahead. And what will that lead to? Why was there so much dissatisfaction that led to the protest, not the riot, the protest in Washington, D.C. earlier this week? Why have so many millions of Trump supporters across the country, stretching back to November, been feeling like it's a rigged game, it's a system that does not work for them? We can either try to answer those questions and take action, or we can continue to deal with the fact that there will be people who no longer view the system as their best option. They no longer see the circumstances we're in as fixable or addressable by the rule of law and by the processes that we currently have for those purposes. So it's really an open question now. But I do believe that the way the left treats people in the conservative side of our politics, on the right, broadly speaking, Republicans, the GOP, the way they treat them in the opening phase of this administration, the Biden administration, will tell us everything we need to know. And it is my belief, although I'm hoping I'm wrong, that they will show us that any calls for unity, any talk of bringing us together was just that, the kind of political boilerplate you use so that then your agents in the media and your DNC hacks all throughout the apparatus of Democrat control silence anybody who would speak out against this incoming administration. They want total control, and they're getting closer and closer to getting it. And that may bring conservatism together. We will rally, we will come together once we see that we won't really have much choice. It'll be join the other side, and I'm not even sure they want you to do that. They'd rather make an example of you. They'd rather humiliate and denigrate Trump supporters than get them to switch to the Democrat Party, at least at prominent, for talking about prominent people, people that are well known in Trump's circle. But that's going to have its own effect. Things have gotten too heated in our politics, that much is for sure. We have a global pandemic. The country has been ravaged by it. We have a lot of people feeling tremendous despair, understandable despair from the circumstances they're under. Businesses destroyed, family members lost to this pandemic and locked away for months on end with corrupt, hypocritical bureaucrats and politicians that don't seem to care about the devastation that's going on around them. All they have to offer us is do what you're told, wear a mask, sit down, be quiet, stay away from other human beings. That's not going to work either. That's not enough. We have to find something better. I hope it's something that can bring us together as a country, but what's much more likely is that while the pendulum has certainly swung toward the Democrats right now, give it time, it'll be moving back in the other direction. And it will be because Joe Biden failed on the promises he's making to make this a better country for all Americans. Coming up next, we'll talk to Trump advisor Steve Cortes about just what the president's thinking and what we should expect for the next 2 weeks. I love Black Rifle coffee. I drink it every morning. In fact, I drink it several times a day. If you're like me, you need coffee, right? But you don't want to be supporting some left-wing company that's full of wokeism. And you also don't want to wait in line. And you want delicious coffee at a great price. I can cover all of that for you with Black Rifle coffee. And the best way to enjoy Black Rifle coffee is through the Coffee Club. That's a free subscription where your chosen coffee is roasted, packaged, and shipped free right to your door on schedule. In addition to the convenience, you receive special discounted pricing and gain access to exclusive products, member-only content, partner discounts, and more. Get the freshest coffee in America without leaving the couch. You can purchase it now at blackriflecoffee.com/buck and use code BUCK at checkout for 20% off your purchase and 20% off your first order of the Coffee Club. Again, that's blackriflecoffee.com/buck. Go check it out today. Get coffee from great American patriots who share your values and want to send you delicious coffee. With the presidential fight finally over, the question remains what's going to happen over the next 2 weeks. President Trump remains the head of the executive branch of this country until January 20th of 2021. So what's left for him to possibly do? Could he add to his legacy? Could he do some important things here? To examine the final days of the Trump administration, what it may bring, We're bringing on now former senior Trump campaign advisor Steve Cortes. Steve, thanks so much. Good to see you again.
You bet. You too, Buck.
So let's start on the positive side of things. How can Trump, in these last 2 weeks, best serve the interests of the American people? What needs to be done now?
Well, let me tell you a few concrete things that I think he can do. And one I think he will do, which is appoint a special counsel. I really believe that the Chinese Communist Party Biden cartel bribery scandal, it should have been the biggest story by far of the campaign. It wasn't, because it was ignored by corporate media and actively suppressed by big tech. But that is still a story and a scandal which needs far more investigation. I think as a country, and this isn't me speaking as a partisan now because the election's over, but this is me speaking as an American, the country is at risk of potentially swearing in a chief executive, a commander-in-chief who is compromised by the foremost enemy of the United States. So I hope and believe that in these closing days, the president is going to appoint a special counsel. What I also think the president needs to do, speaking more politically now, and what I think he will do, and what I hope he will do, my suggestion to him is get out of Washington, D.C. I think he is at his best, I think, when he's among the American people. And I think what he should do is a short tour of sorts that highlights some of the best accomplishments of his administration. So my suggestions are do things like go to the wall, where we now have almost 450 miles of solid, real walling on the southern border of the United States. I think he should also go to a factory or another business that has been protected because he took a tough stance against China. I also think it'd be a good idea for him to go to a hospital or some sort of distribution center that has the vaccine that is being currently administered to millions of Americans, a vaccine that was developed because of his leadership, also because, of course, of the scientists, but in part because of his leadership of Operation Warp Speed. So to me, I think that would be both in tone and substance a wonderful way for him to end in these next dozen or so days that he's president of the United States.
Steve, what do you make of all these reports of the 25th Amendment, of resignations of senior advisors, cabinet officials? The former White House communications director has said that she believes the president should resign. These are people that have been around the president extensively in recent months and whom he has trusted. What's going on here?
Right. Well, Buck, let me start with Alyssa Farah, the former communications director, because I think she is the most shameful of all the people now who have jumped ship when they believe it's politically expedient to do so. She claims that she has believed for some time that the Trump campaign, that President Trump legitimately lost the election. Well, if that's the case, then she was a complete liar in front of the American people, because she was White House comms director when the Trump White House, when our campaign was actively pursuing the case to uncover the frauds, irregularities, and constitutional violations that we believe tainted the vote. So she was literally paid by taxpayers then to promote something which, in her own admission now, she believes is a lie. So I think she should be just summarily dismissed as somebody who is unserious and unscrupulous. There are other folks, unfortunately, who have chosen to jump ship. I think a lot of these people were probably never on board fully the president's America First agenda in the beginning. And look, I think this president did a magnificent job, but I definitely think there were problems all along with personnel. It was hard as an outsider insurgent movement to find people who were truly committed to his agenda. Regarding the 25th Amendment, Buck, I have to almost laugh at this. I'm in regular communication with the president himself. He is, of course, fully in command. Is he angry about the situation? Of course he is, but he's in no way irrational. He's in no way unable to govern. And the reason I say, though, too, that I almost laugh about it is that, look, and then this part isn't really funny, but it's crazy that we're talking about 25th Amendment regarding Donald Trump, when in fact, President-elect Biden is the person who may face very serious 25th Amendment issues that are not just political and partisan, that are medical. We are about to swear in as our commander-in-chief a man who showed himself, I think, during the campaign. And by the way, I'm not trying to mock him here, because this is not his fault, but a man who is clearly not physically and mentally up to the task of the hardest job in the entire world. This is a boxer, to use a sports metaphor, this is a boxer who no longer belongs in the ring. So I believe sooner rather than later, we're going to be having very serious 25th Amendment conversations, not about Donald Trump, but about President Joe Biden.
You are in contact with the president on a regular basis. How's he doing? How has he been handling this? This week has been a lot, even for the Trump presidency.
Sure. No, listen, this president is amazingly resilient. You know, what he has dealt with and what he has achieved in spite of the obstacles that were put in front of him, the prosperity that he created in this country before the Chinese Communist Party virus, unfortunately, artificially halted all of that momentum, the peace abroad and America first vision of realism and restraint abroad. What he achieved is really incredible. I believe it's one of the most successful, if not the most successful presidential term in modern American history. He did it in spite of a constantly oppositional, dishonest press, in spite of a Congress which is normally in his way, even when it was controlled by Republicans. So this is a man of resilience, is my point. And he can handle the stress of all of this, thankfully. Now, is he angry? Yes, he is. And I think rightfully so. I'm angry. I think tens of millions of people out there are angry. We believe, and I think we have substantiation to believe, that this election was stolen from us, that these swing states, the vote was fundamentally tainted by constitutional violations, as well as the statistical anomalies, which we believe represent serious fraud in these states. And I look.
Do you think that anybody involved, Steve? I've got to ask you. I don't want to cut you off, but we're going to run out of time. Do you think that there were people involved in the legal challenge, whether on their own or for the campaign at some level, who were either exaggerating or over-promising what they'd be able to deliver?
You know, certainly some people outside of the campaign. Absolutely. You know, I think that's undoubted. People who were allies of the president, people who were, I think, had the best interest of the president at heart, but certainly did not pursue the right tactics. You know, absolutely. But as far as the actual official campaign legal team, no, I really don't believe that there was exaggeration there. And I think the proper strategies were followed. I think, frankly, a lot of courts, you know, the corporate media loves to say that we lost 60 times or 70 times or pick your number. That's simply not true. Many of those cases were not brought by the campaign. Almost all of them were not. And even of those cases, by the way, most of them, the courts refused to hear based on standing, based on procedural issues. So we really never got our day in court, with the lone exception of Wisconsin, where we narrowly lost in the Supreme Court there 4-3. And by the way, court cases are still pending, which is still important. It's not going to make Donald Trump president on January 20th, but it's still important for the integrity of our electoral process going forward.
Steve Cortes, good to see you, sir. Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Donald Trump's presidency will be coming to an end in a couple of weeks. So what is the future of the movement that he began? More on that with First TV contributor Rob Smith when we come back. I got a crash course in home title theft recently, and you better pray this crime never happens to you, because it can ruin you financially. Here's how the crime happens. The legal titles to our homes are kept online where they can be hacked. A cyber thief finds your home's title, forges your signature on a quitclaim deed stating you sold your home to him. Then he takes out loans against your home until your equity is gone. You won't know about this until the collection calls pour in, for the most part, and you're not protected by insurance, your bank, or common identity theft programs that are out there right now. Home Title Lock protects you. And in the unlikely event you become a victim of title theft while a member, Home Title Lock will spend up to $250,000 in legal fees to help restore your home's title. Go to HometitleLock.com and register your address to see if you're already a victim. Then use code RADIO for 30 free days of protection. That's code RADIO at HometitleLock.com. Again, you'll get 30 free days of protection by going to HometitleLock.com and using code RADIO. Regardless of how one feels about President Trump and his impact on the American body politic, one thing is very clear. He remains the most popular figure in the Republican Party by a long shot. His base is loyal and is not going away regardless of Trump being in office or not. Trump will likely continue to influence the party for years to come. He will set much of the tone and direction. That's just what we see happening here. To help us make some predictions about the future of the MAGA movement overall, let's welcome back to the program First TV contributor Rob Smith. Rob, my man, good to see you.
Hey, it's good to see you as well, Buck.
How are you feeling, man? It's a tough week, right? You're a Trump supporter, I'm a Trump supporter, voted for the guy twice. Here we are. He's not going to be president. We know that. It's over. It's done. What are your thoughts?
It has been a tough week. I guess what my thoughts are is, I've been disappointed. I've been angry. I've been upset. I think the events in D.C. were pretty bad, even though I think that they're being a little overblown by the left. And what actually disappoints me right now is that there are still some people who still believe that Trump has not conceded yet. There are some people that still believe that somehow he's going to be president. And what makes me the most upset about everything that's happened this week, Buck, is people like you and I that have large platforms, but that have fed followers these lies over the past couple of months, okay? And I want to be very clear. Talking about election integrity and talking about some of the irregularities of this election, that's not lies. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this Kraken stuff. I'm talking about the idea that Mike Pence was somehow going to overturn the election and hand it to Trump, and that now Pence is somehow a traitor because he didn't do that. I'm talking about like just a lot of the nuttiness that is going on. And I think that a lot of the nuttiness that people have been fed over the past couple of months led to what we saw at the Capitol earlier this week. And we, as conservatives, as Republicans, as people on the right, we have to own up to that. Now, I'm not saying that we're on any way being controlled by the left because they're like, oh, you should denounce this, you should say that. We're denouncing it and we are saying it because we realize that wrong is wrong, just like we denounced the BLM protests last summer. But the point that I've been making is that we have to be very careful what we say and what we explore in the messages that we put out via social media, because people listen to these things.
Rob, I think that's absolutely, it's important for everybody. And we have to remember that there are folks who will act on things that get too much oxygen in the social media ecosystem. There are lines. I mean, I think that some of the social media suppression we've seen is far too partisan and goes too far. But there also are places where you'd have to say, okay, this is actually getting out of hand, and we've seen the results of what that can be. But I want to talk to you really about where you think we go from here. What happens now? Do you think that President Trump is going to take some time off and then come back and try to lead a movement, in a sense, in exile, perhaps from Mar-a-Lago? Or are we going to see the rise of something else that takes Trump ideas and the populist conservatism that he represented in many ways and create a new movement?
I think we're going to see the latter, but I also think that we're still going to see Trump being a leader. I mean, look, I think that the mistake that a lot of people in this movement made was making everything all about Trump all the time. He was definitely the figurehead of the movement. He was definitely the CEO. But this movement was always about us. It was about hardworking American people standing up and saying enough is enough. And this MAGA movement, this populist movement, doesn't end now that Trump is not going to be president again. And I think that it's going to have so much power and so much influence over the types of people that we see leading the party in the future, be it congressmen, be it senators, be it even, our next Republican nominee for president in 2024. So I think that's where the movement goes from here. Do I think Trump is going to take a little bit of time off? I don't know. Do I think he should take a little bit of time off and a step back? Yes. Because honestly, the election integrity questions notwithstanding, the last couple of months was an opportunity for Trump to take a victory lap. There was so much that was extremely successful in this administration, in this 4 years of the Trump administration, that he could have underlined, that he could have talked about, that he could have done more to make people remember. Instead, we went down the rabbit hole of the Kraken and things being stolen and all of this stuff. And I think that it really does diminish a lot of the amazing accomplishments that he really did make.
And is there any single area or idea that you're expecting will be a rallying point for conservatives now that we are going to be out of power, at least in government, in the House, the Senate, and the White House? We haven't been here since 2008. A lot of people are very concerned. How do you think that we dust ourselves off and get into the next fray? Metaphorically speaking, of course.
I think that we have to continue going with some of the big gains that we did make over the past couple of years. When we talk about, the amount of minority voters that the president had, when we talk about this populist movement, there is this idea that people are actually thinking about what an America First agenda is. What does it mean to put this country before everyone else, just as we've signed a stimulus that sent billions of dollars in aid to different countries? But I think that if we focus on these ideas, the focus on freedom, the focus on what agendas really benefit America and Americans, if we focus on the populism, if we focus on the idea that the right and conservatism in the Republican Party is a big tent party full of ideas, then we will make the way forward. What we have to start doing is being better about our messages and being better about what ideas we actually have. We cannot just be against the left all the time. We have to be able to stand up and articulate our ideas. We have to say that these ideas are better than the left, and we have to get new, younger, fresher faces to push forward this agenda. I am tired of seeing Mitch McConnell. I'm just tired of seeing some of these people. The best thing that has happened with the Trump administration is that he's brought in so many different new people, and we have to start utilizing them to our benefit, because if not, then where we are out in the wilderness right now is where we're going to remain.
What would you like to see a focus on? You mentioned issues, you mentioned what we should do in terms of building the movement, who should be involved in it, but issue-wise, Rob, what do you see as key? And just give me an area or two where, even though we won't be in a legislative or executive branch position to enact them, we should be making the case as conservatives as strongly as we can.
I think that a focus on entrepreneurship, one of the really interesting things that happened with the Trump administration that didn't get any play was the opportunity zone. So when they went into kind of like these lower income communities and started creating businesses and creating economic development in that way, I think that there's a lot of talk about inequality in America, right? And we allow the left to own that conversation, and we allow them to push their ideas about how to solve inequality in America, which is pure socialism. If we have a focus on entrepreneurship and a focus on capitalism and try to kind of put forth those ideas in the ways that these two ideas can help kind of like alleviate some of the inequality that exists in America, then I think we win. If we go to the same old stuff that we have been doing kind of before Trump, where we just have these noble losers talking about fiscal responsibility and stuff that the people just don't connect to, then I think we'll keep on losing.
Rob, glad you're with us on the team here, my friend, trying to make the best possible future for America, despite these election sad days we've had here. But Rob Smith, always good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you too, Buck. Thanks a lot.
The events of the past week, conservatives and Trump supporters are likely to face a whole new wave of cancellations from the left. Author Gad Saad on the phenomenon of cancel culture right after the break. Fellow patriots, MAGA CBD is a revolutionary American-made product that is safe for work, THC-free, and features patented NASA technology, which makes it the highest quality CBD oil on the market. Dedicated to providing the purest, most effective products on the market, MAGA CBD provides third-party testing results from industry-leading experts. MAGA CBD is 100% committed to customer satisfaction and product quality. Best of all, 10% of proceeds benefit veterans and first responders. Look, MAGA CBD has helped me many times sleep through the night, which is something that I've struggled with in the past. And you can really feel and taste the difference with their apple pie flavored oil. What CBD product on the market could be more American? MAGA, NASA, apple pie. It's America at its finest. For your CBD needs, look no further than MAGA CBD. Learn more and order today at magacbd.org and save 10% with promo code BUCK. That's MAGA CBD, Charlie Bravo Delta, magacbd.org. Use promo code BUCK. 2020 was full of societal crisis, the coronavirus pandemic, political discourse, racial unrest. And at the start of 2021, we find ourselves facing a fresh wave of cancel culture. This form of mob rule has dominated almost every aspect of American life: politics, journalism, sports, and education. Those may actually in some ways be the biggest victims of this. Cancel culture within higher education has reached extraordinary heights. Many of our college campuses have become progressive seminaries full of trigger warnings and safe spaces, and the threat to intellectual freedom is only growing stronger. Joining me now is somebody who fights on the forefront against this cancel culture. In his latest best-selling book, The Parasitic Mind, How Infectious Ideas Are Killing Common Sense, Gad Saad shines light on what's at stake in the war against truth. He's now here to discuss this with us. Gad, thanks so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Great to be with you.
Why is cancel culture getting worse? Can I start with that?
Right. So I think in the book, I talk about deontological ethics versus consequentialist ethics. Deontological ethics are absolute truth. So, for example, if I say it is never okay to lie, that is a deontological statement. If I say it is okay to lie if I'm trying to spare someone's feelings, that's a consequentialist statement. So I think what the cancel culture jihadis do is that they believe that there are some things that should not be stated, even though they may be true, because they are taking a consequentialist ethos when they are navigating through this issue. Whereas an absolutist deontological perspective would say you could research whatever you want, you could state whatever you want, as long as you're not inciting violence against anybody, you're not engaging in libel and defamation and so on, then everything is up for grabs. And so I think the cancel culture ethos of consequentialist ethics is unfortunately taking over much of intelligentsia.
How is academia being influenced by the idea pathogens that you describe in your book?
Yeah, so the idea pathogens that I discuss in the book are, all of them were spawned originally via the academic ecosystem. As I always try to remind people, it takes intellectuals to come up with really dumb ideas. So if we use the epidemiological model that we're now all familiar with the current pandemic, you first have to identify where the pathogen comes from, then how it propagates, and hopefully find the vaccine against it. And so what I do in the book is I identify these idea pathogens, and I'll discuss, if you'd like, one or two of them quickly here.
Yes, please.
And then
Go ahead. What are these idea pathogens?
So the probably the granddaddy of them all is postmodernism, because postmodernism stipulates that there are no universal truths. There are no absolute truths. We are completely constrained by subjectivity. We are constrained by relativism. We are constrained by personal biases. And so you might imagine how that's a grossly anti-scientific position to take, because scientists do wake up every day under the working presumption that there are truths to be discovered. Now, of course, truths can change in science, right? What we thought was true 300 years ago may no longer be true today, but we do operate under the epistemological understanding that there are truths to be discovered. So postmodernism is a form of intellectual terrorism.
That puts it well. So you go through that, you describe it in academia. Why has it spread through the broader culture so much? I mean, now it seems like you can't go into a corporate boardroom without being assaulted by some variation of wokeness.
Yeah, because each of these idea pathogens starts off with a noble cause and with a kernel of truth, but that then becomes, it metamorphosizes into something much more grotesque. So let's take another idea pathogen. Militant feminism is the metamorphosis of originally a reasonable idea, right? Equity feminism is something that we would all support, right? The idea that men and women should be equal under the law is something that, any reasonably, clear thinking person would support. Militant feminism pushes the argument further. It says that in the pursuit of justice across the two sexes, we have to negate the possibility that there are evolved sex differences. We have to negate the possibility that there are evolutionary-based sex differences, which is the field that I study, evolutionary psychology. And so it starts off as a noble cause, but then it metamorphosizes into a dreadful idea pathogen. And as I always tell people, these dreadful ideas are not restricted to academia. They're not just these little esoteric, imbecilic ideas. They eventually become the downstream ideas that become normalized, as you said, in corporations with identity politics and so on.
Yeah, I refer to colleges as the laboratories for lunacy, because it starts there and then it spreads like a pathogen that gets out of a lab, by the way, and we've seen that now all throughout the culture. But the evolutionary perspective you brought up, I think that's very interesting, because for any person who is just in the business, and I say that broadly, but just taking the position of observing, allowing, for example, men to not only be involved in biological males to be involved in women's sports, but even combative sports, things like mixed martial arts and boxing, that a normal person sees this and says, okay, this is insane, right? We all understand this is insane. The left doesn't leave room for that anymore. Explain how otherwise intelligent people can think having a 180-pound guy with male genitalia in a cage fight against a 170-pound female isn't completely crazy.
That's what I refer to in the book as the tyranny of the minority, and it's something that I actually discussed first in a testimony that I gave in front of the Canadian Senate. Jordan Peterson, some of your viewers may also know him.
I had Jordan on my radio show years ago when he first got in trouble at his university in Canada because he was saying, I'm not going to use the wrong pronouns for people because they feel like it. But go ahead.
Exactly. So imagine that we had to appear in front of the Canadian Senate at the time. It was 2017. So it's the 21st century, where we have to say, there really is such a thing as male and female. And here are the evolutionary reasons why there is such a thing as male and female, and why they might have physiological, hormonal, biological, anatomical, behavioral differences. So it's really a trip to lunacy. It's an abyss of infinite imbecility, right? Now, why does it happen? Because in the pursuit, in this case, of protecting the feelings of a small marginalized group, we end up trampling on a much larger group called women, right? So in protecting the right of a transgender woman, meaning a biological male, to compete against biological females, you're protecting her right, the transgender person, but you are trampling on the right of every single other biological female that is going to lose to this person. Well, there's a hierarchy of victimhood, and regrettably, women don't do as well on that hierarchy as compared to transgender people.
What is the appeal of this philosophy for people? I mean, why are people drawn to, you said postmodernism is one of the germs that then causes a kind of intellectual pandemic. What draws people to this? I mean, how do they go down this rabbit hole where they're coming to these conclusions, some of which we're discussing here?
So I try to exactly answer this question by seeing if I could look for any commonalities across all the idea pathogens that I discuss in the book. And my conclusion is they all free us from the pesky shackles of reality, right? Postmodernism frees me from a thing called absolute truth. Social constructivism, which is the idea that we are all born with equal potentiality, there are no biological differences between us, frees me from the possibility that I may not be the next Michael Jordan, right? We're all born with the potential to be the next Michael Jordan, and it's only evil socialization that did not make us that. So if I go through each of these idea pathogens, in some grotesque distortion of reality, they free us from the burdensome truth inherent to reality, right? The trans prefix frees me from my genitalia, right? So I could be a biological male who's 260 pounds, 6'7", then I self-identify as woman, I become a woman. I have freed myself from an otherwise pesky biological reality. And by the way, in saying that, that doesn't mean that I don't support transgender rights. Now, I could walk and chew gum at the same time. I could be fully on board with the fact that I want a society where there is freedom from bigotry for all people, while not murdering truth in the service of that noble justice goal.
Gad, we got so much more we can go into here. We'll have to have you back to talk about it again. Congrats on the book, and appreciate you joining us.
Cheers. Thanks, Buck.
After the break, time for a roundup of takes from around the internet. Stay tuned for the Buckshot. These days, being prepared for the unknown is more important than ever. I'm sure you've noticed the world we live in today is anything but predictable. We could all benefit from something reliable right now. What could be more reliable than real gold and silver? I'm talking about real gold and silver you can actually hold right in your hands. Call the Oxford Gold Group right now. Learn how easy it is to get real gold and silver sent securely directly to your home, or how you can have real gold and silver placed in your IRA or 401k. Just call the Oxford Gold Group at 833-600-GOLD and ask for your free guide on owning gold and silver. Again, call the Oxford Gold Group right now at 833-600-GOLD. The Oxford Gold Group is the only gold company I trust. Call them right now at 833-600-GOLD. One more time, that's 833-600-GOLD. Don't wait for inflation to kick up. Don't wait for the economy to tank. Take action today to protect your wealth and your savings as you go forward into retirement. 833-600-GOLD, the Oxford Gold Group, the only gold company I trust. Welcome back. It's time for our Buckshot, the quick takes from all around the internet. Let's get to it. First, you have political analyst, I guess. I think we could call her that. Joy Behar, former unfunny comedian. Here she is. Remember we were talking earlier in the show about how they're purging and they want to get rid of conservatives. They want to punish conservatives. Here she is saying that that's what should happen to the media of the right.
But the lying is the biggest problem, because look at where it has brought these people. And one more thing.
Right.
How is that going to happen? Because you have somebody like Matt Gaetz saying that it was Antifa people dressed as protesters. This is never going to get settled. They are the biggest liars. They have these people like Gaetz have to be taken down.
Right.
And the media on the right
Jay,
also has to be sanctioned.
Taken down, sanctioned. What does that mean? What does she mean by that? Somebody should probably ask her. I know it's The View, and so no serious person takes it seriously, but maybe we should at least get a sense of what prominent Democrat opinion is on this issue. I'm just curious, just wondering. And then you also have this one here. You had Chris Hayes. Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Kinzinger. We'll get to that one first. If you're a Republican and you were benefiting from Trump up to this point in politics, you asked him to come and speak on your behalf and come to your rallies and all this stuff. At this stage, to be the one that says, "Oh, I always thought Trump was terrible," wouldn't that be something that looks a little bit like it's just self-indulgent, self-interested? Here's Representative Kinzinger calling Trump a cult leader. He's a Republican.
This is like a massive litmus test in people's minds, because it's almost like he's some cult leader that if you ever turn against, it's like leaving a cult in some people's minds, because it has driven people to go to the Capitol and to try to overthrow the Capitol. I think I saw that 45% of Republicans think that the occupation of the Capitol was a good thing. My God.
Wow. I agree with the 55% who think it was a terrible thing. But Kinzinger is calling Trump a cult leader. I have to wonder what exactly is different about Trump now than months and months ago. Maybe he was particularly harsh on him. I would have to wonder. But I just want to point out Republicans who, at this stage, have developed this distaste for Trump. Seems a little late in the game, doesn't it? Seems a little self-interested to me. Do you remember Dzhokhar Tsarnaev? Remember Dzhokhar Tsarnaev? He was the Boston Marathon bomber. He was one of the two, of course, him and his brother, Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. And he is, in fact, suing the federal government for $250,000 over his treatment inside the Colorado Supermax prison, where he is serving a life sentence. He claims that his baseball cap was confiscated, and he has been restricted to only 3 showers a week. It is amazing to many of us that this individual is still alive when there is a federal death penalty for lethal terrorist offenses like the one that he was involved in at the Boston Marathon bombing. But we are a country that still believes in the rule of law, and so Dzhokhar Tsarnaev continues to be supported by the American taxpayer. And then there's this, and this might have been in some ways one of the more frustrating statements made by Joe Biden recently. He said the following about the BLM protests versus the Capitol Hill protests. Play it.
No one can tell me that if had been a group of Black Lives Matter protesting yesterday, they wouldn't have been treated very, very differently than the mob of thugs that stormed the Capitol. We all know that's true. And it is unacceptable. Totally unacceptable.
A woman was shot in the neck and killed by Capitol Hill police. I mean, to suggest that this was entirely police favoritism toward rioting protesters, they deployed tear gas. There were police were punching and hitting with truncheons and batons. What exactly is the expectation here? And think about what BLM did, not just once, not on one time when people weren't expecting it to get out of hand, but did for months in hundreds of occasions all across the country. And the police were generally, as if anything, too withdrawn from it. I mean, there were police precincts burned to the ground. They tried to burn a federal courthouse to the ground in Portland. I mean, this actually happened over the summer. No lethal force used ever in any of those incidents by police. But we're going to talk about how this was all because the left is treated so badly when they riot, which they do with some frequency. And they don't, as you can see from Joe Biden, they don't repudiate it. Not even at the very top level. Donald Trump has repudiated, has condemned the riot in the Capitol. He has done that. Joe Biden has never condemned and never will the rioting of Black Lives Matter and Antifa that shook the country for months. And to what end? Oh, maybe to terrify and intimidate people so they could win an election. There's that too. That's it for tonight's Hold the Line. The No Spin News with Bill O'Reilly is up next. Have a good weekend, everybody. Try to get some time away from all this madness. Shields high.